some of you, I'm sure, don't recognise Dave in his cities, actually, because but you may know Dave from his alter ego. Is that what you would say?
Yeah.
Bob Bullens, who's a stilt walker and comes with it on some of the parades and so on. But I suppose first came across Dave at a Belfast Skeptics event, actually, which was very, very funny and very, very interesting. And I don't know why we don't have more of those Belfast Skeptics events. They're brilliant. An antidote to this one, maybe. But very, very good. So Dave has been long-term supporter, really, of humanism, skepticism, and atheism in general. So Dave is going to explain to us why, as humanists, we should be interested in vegan ethics and why there's a connection, really, I suppose, between being a humanist and actually going that step further, if you like, and thinking about animal rights and ethics in general. So, Dave, thank you very much.
You have to excuse me, this is all very technical tonight, the slides and everything. So yeah, as Ian said, my name is Dave, and I am a juggler. It's probably more accurate to say a children's entertainer. If you were being generous, you would call me a street theatre practitioner. I'd rather you didn't call me a street theatre practitioner. I think that elevates it to a position it really doesn't deserve. Basically, I play with my balls in front of kids. So, as it says, as a juggler, I do go by the name of Bob Bobbins. So some people call me Dave, some people call me Bob, some people call me Space Cowboy, but no, yeah, I'm here tonight, I suppose, in my capacity as a vegan. One of the many labels that you could apply to me, I suppose you've got atheist, humanist, skeptic, cyclist, coffee, nearly the full deck of hipster cards. Not quite, the beard isn't quite long enough for that yet. But yeah, we're here tonight, we're talking about veganism. The problem for a lot of people is getting the message of veganism across in a way that people will appreciate and understand without feeling preached at. And that has been an issue for the animal rights movement over the last few years. So I thought I'd start off to lighten the mood with a joke. So I did a quick Google search to find what the answer to this question would be. I sort of knew before I started, but I got a couple of answers. So how many vegans does it take to change a light bulb? A couple of the ones that I liked when I Googled it, one of them was 2. One to get on their high horse, and another chastise them for oppressing the horse. Another one was 101. 100 to crowdsource a website dedicated to finding out which brands satisfy a strict set of vegan criteria. And 1 to order a light bulb from an obscure online store in an overseas country. But I'm sure you can probably predict what the most common answer to that question was when you Google it, and it was 2. 1 to change the light bulb, the other to tell everybody else about it. Because everybody says that vegans are always going on about their veganism. But I've got an excuse tonight because I've been to talk about my veganism, so that's my get out tonight. So, just a little bit of my background with vegetarianism and veganism. I've been a vegetarian for 35 years now, I think, and a vegan probably for the last 5 years. With regards to animal rights, when I was a student I was a hunt saboteur, then I moved over to Northern Ireland, and farmers in Northern Ireland aren't that keen on being told what to do with their land by an Englishman, particularly in South Alabama. So edged away from that aspect of animal rights when they moved over here, and the family issues and things like that, so it wasn't as much of an option. But yeah, still interested in animal rights. So basically, we should probably start off with a definition of what an ethical vegan is. So an ethical vegan is someone who not only follows a vegan diet, but extends this philosophy to other areas of their life and opposes the use of animals for any purpose. So I think that's fairly clear that we're not just talking about the food there. Now, humanists, I would hope that most of you would probably be a bit clearer on this definition. Now, in the Humanist Manifesto, which has been three, am I right? There's been three to date over the decades. There's not much mention of animal rights within the Humanist Manifesto, but the UK humanists are making strides in the right direction, and this definition of what a humanist is actually from the UK Humanists webpage. So a humanist is someone who trusts the scientific method, makes ethical decisions based on reason, empathy, and a concern for human beings, this is the key bit here, and other sentient animals. Rejects the idea of an afterlife, gives their own life meaning by seeking happiness in this life. Okay, so I think you'll agree they are moving in the animal rights direction, so if you're not on board already, hopefully you will be by the end of this evening. So the idea of man being in charge of all the other animals, it is quite a religious idea, one that we should probably believe in behind. It's this idea of dominion, that man has power over everything else, over women, over all the animals in the sea. I'm not going to read out the whole Genesis quote there, but you read it for yourself if you want. Yeah, so this sort of behaviour has become normalised, and it's not difficult to understand why people have eaten meat for centuries, and it's basically, it comes down to this. It's perceived as normal, natural, necessary, and nice. The four M's, basically. But I prefer to think of it as a more scientific way of looking at this. Albert Einstein said, we express ourselves as something separate from the rest, restricting our compassion to those closest to us. So this quote is actually, the next quote is from Einstein as well. He said, our task must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circle of compassion, to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature. So, you know, different to the religious view of dominion of man above everything else, basically. This sort of view of animal rights also ties in with sort of the intersectionality sort of view of things as well. Animal rights being a part of the broader social justice movement. So it's possible, you know, to link animal rights in with the social justice movements. For example, with ecofeminism argues, using terms such as Mother Earth, things like that, is a way that patriarchy sort of turns a natural world into an economic resource to be used, basically. This ties in with ideas of patriarchal dualism as well. You know, the way we've got ideas separating masculine, feminine, mind, body, reason and emotion, and human, non-human, as the example tonight. Hopefully we'll show you. So yeah, it's part of a wider social justice movement. But as well as that, we need to think about the way that we look at animals. Most of you educated people here tonight, I hope, so you'd be familiar with the term cognitive dissonance. So if you're not familiar with that term, basically what it means is a feeling of uncomfortable tension which comes from holding two conflicting thoughts in the mind at the same time. So we're happily enough to think of a cow in terms of its body parts, but we're less happy to apply that same definition to a dog. So we're more likely to put this type of diagram on the dog there. That's my dog Harvey. Yeah, so, but the thing is that both animals in that picture have the same capacity, you know, to feel pain, you know, to basically want to live a pain-free existence. You know, the next video will hopefully demonstrate this if the video works. Basically, that's just a still picture of the same video. You can search it on YouTube later, and it's basically a cow acting in exactly the same way that a dog would, playing fetch with a ball. So basically you get an idea what that's about there. So the thing is, if you acknowledge that cows are other animals and emotionless meat-producing robots, then you must by necessity acknowledge that they have personalities, experience pain, and a whole range of emotions that we naively assume to be uniquely human, but not be applied to a lot of animals. So the one true one, and the next one is the only slide showing you know, the situation that a lot of animals are existing under. It's not too graphic, and I'm only going to keep it up for a very short amount of time. But you know, this is the type of conditions we're talking about when we're talking about animal rights. Don't need to go into a lot of detail there with regards to the extent of the suffering that goes on in the farming industry. Northern Ireland is one of the UK's most prominent regions for intensive factory farming. We'll move on that slide now. Moy Park is one of the biggest producers in the country, not only just Northern Ireland, in the whole country. Can anybody like to hazard a guess how many chickens are produced by Moy Park each week? Probably not get anywhere close. It's 6 million.
I was going to say 1 million just to be outrageous.
Yeah. 6 million chickens.
Just in Northern Ireland?
Just processed in Northern Ireland. I'm not sure whether they go throughout the country.
In all the different factories.
Yeah, in all the more.
We're actually going to wrap that up. I used to work for them.
Really? So that just gives you some idea of the extent of the issue we're talking about here. But hopefully, having seen that, you may be contemplating, so we can go vegan. That's what I'm hoping by the end of this evening as well. So there's been a massive surge in veganism in the last 3 or 4 years. Huge surge in veganism. People go vegan for several different reasons. Some people have done it to lose weight. Some people have done it so they can show off their vegan gains on Instagram.
No more.
But research suggests that you are more...
That's horrific doing that to that animal.
Research suggests that you are more likely to stick to veganism if you're doing it for ethical and political reasons, doing this political position that you're taking, a reflection of the value that you place on life and the suffering of others. So make sure you're doing it for the right reasons, basically. But the problem is that the ethical argument doesn't always incentivize people to go vegan. You can tell people this message till you're blue in the face. Some people are still going to ignore it. So we need new ways of communicating this to people. But luckily, it's easier now to go vegan than it has ever been. There has, in the last few years, been a vegan food revolution. Demand for, this is a staggering statistic as well, 6 million was a big statistic. Demand for meat-free food has increased by 987% in 2017. So people are now 3 times more likely to search for vegan products and vegetarian products, so it shows that we're getting brand recognition at last there. And 92% of vegans are actually eaten by non-vegans, so the role that non-vegans have to play in this is crucially important, and I'll move on to that later on as well. Tesco's actually doubled their vegan range due to demand just going massive in the last couple of years. And if you're into your junk food, I'm not looking at you specifically there, Jared, but you're in luck because there's plenty of junk food available. There's vegan burgers, vegan pizzas, Skittles, Oreos. There's a lot of food out there to choose from. You don't have to be healthy if you don't want to be. But surely the greatest innovation in recent years has been the Greggs vegan sausage roll. Now, if you're not familiar with the Greggs vegan sausage roll, it was made popular by Piers Morgan. Piers Morgan was incredibly angry about the fact that the Greg that produced this vegan sausage roll. And
Another reason to eat.
really angry. And if there's one reason you go vegan tonight, just to annoy Piers Morgan, surely it's a reason. But we should probably thank him really, because he's probably done more to raise the profile of veganism than anybody else in the last year. In fact, I think the sales have gone up 10% in the first quarter purely on the sale of this sausage roll. And I think he's got a lot to do with that. Some vegans don't like the idea of mock meats. I think it was Alexis Sale, he was trying to think of more interesting names for them to entice his kids, so he was calling fake prawn ham, he was calling sham. He couldn't think of one for chicken, that's something he called it mock-a-doodle-doo. But as far as I'm concerned, I don't remotely have an issue with meat substitutes. I can't understand why any vegan would have a problem with it. I'm not opposed to the taste of meat. I'm opposed to the killing of animals to satisfy that need. Anything that gets us closer to that, I'm happy enough with. But the issue is as well, just because something is vegan doesn't make it ethical. There's a whole other area of ethical eating that goes along with this as well. So just because something is plant-based doesn't mean it's cruelty-free. A lot of food is produced under grueling labour conditions. There's exposure to a lot of agricultural chemicals. People who work in the agriculture industry can have a lower life expectancy. Huge areas of rainforest, John will be talking about this as well, are cleared to produce beef. But the fact is, monoculture crops, vegan crops if you like, soy and palm oil are doing equally as much damage as beef, maybe not quite as much as beef, but still doing a lot of damage. And agricultural business has terrible human rights record as well. Indonesian families have been forced off their land at gunpoint. People have been killed for resisting. Same is true in Brazil and Paraguay. 833 people have been killed in Brazil between 2007 and 2013 to do with the agriculture and deforestation. But omnivores are, I'm afraid, are responsible for nearly 2.5 times as much global warming as vegans. So even every diet has its impact, but meat eaters are 2.5 times worse than vegans in that respect. The UN are urging a substantial worldwide diet change away from animal products. A vegan diet would also tackle, to some degree, problems with antibiotic-resistant infections. And 80% of all antibiotics are currently used on farm animals. The whole process of factory farming is usually wasteful in terms of the amount of water it uses and the pollution put into water. Growing crops to feed animals is just adding another step into the process. All food production has some environmental impact. Growing, harvesting, transporting fruit and vegetable comes at a cost. But the cost of producing meat is much more. It takes 23 gallons of water to produce an ounce of almonds. But if you do the same for beef, it's 106 gallons to produce an ounce of beef. It does seem like you have little control over these huge monolithic multinationals and the way that they're destroying the planet. But every social justice movement takes its power from the grassroots. The only change only ever comes from the grassroots. The only thing you can do about it as an individual is what you're doing in your own life. You can try as much as we can create movements to try and move this forward. The change has to come from you. The change has to be on an individual level. It really does. What's next? So yeah, so you should go vegan for the animals. You should go vegan for the environment. But if being vegan is part of a more ethical, considered worldview, a way of living with more intention and purpose, it makes sense to extend that concern to yourself and your own health and well-being by eating in a way that is good for you as well as for the planet and the animals. Now, it's no wonder that people don't eat healthy. In Northern Ireland, if you grew up, your idea of a salad was probably something like that. I'm not even going to put beetroot on there, so. But if that's your idea of a nice salad, then it's no wonder that you're not eating your fruit and veg. It's just sad to say a lot of people in Northern Ireland still have the diet of a 12-year-old boy. No, keep up the joke. But in this day and age, salads can be a lot more exciting. You know, there's a nice way to eat as long as you're concentrating on what you're doing. People have always asking as well, where's the protein? I'm sure that's been going through your head the whole talk, but Dave, what about the protein? What about the protein? Well, 4 ounces of beef, 24 grams of protein, 4 ounces of black beans, also 24 grams of protein. It's one of the things that vegans think least about, is where they're getting the protein. And two guys that also, oh yeah, as well as that, the beans there has a third of the calories, I think. And two guys that never get asked, where do you get your protein? This guy here, and this guy there. In fact, he's what's his name? Nate Diaz, he's an MMA fighter. So a lot of MMA fighters have actually gone vegan, as well as a lot of other athletes as well. Karen might know who that is because you're a fan of your memes. Do you know who that is?
Oh, what's the name? It's not wrong, is it?
It is. Well done. I knew Karen would know that when he loves his memes. That's her right there. So yeah, they get plenty of protein there. Other things to consider if you are going to go on a vegan diet. A lot of criticism is levelled at the vegan diet that isn't specific to a vegan diet. If any diet that you're eating needs to be thought through and balanced. You know, a lot of meat eaters could hardly call their diet a natural, balanced diet as well. So, but if you are going to go vegan, you do need to think about your B12, your D. A lot of those you can get through fortified milks, like your soy milk or oat milk. Oat milk, probably preferable. Oat milk's really easy to make your own oat milk. Just load of porridges, force a wok for it, and some muslin. You can make your own oat milk. And it's not just vegans that are fortifying the milk. Cow's milk is fortified with those things as well. Everybody's fortifying the milk, as they should do. Calcium, plenty of calcium in dark leafy greens, broccoli, almonds. Iron you get from nuts, seeds, whole grains, taken with vitamin C to aid its absorption. Omega-3 as well is an important one, you get from flaxseed as well. So as well as your diet, the other things you need to consider if you're becoming an ethical vegan: entertainment, cosmetics, animal testing. Now, probably the easier two to deal with there are the cosmetics and the entertainment side of things. I can't think of any ethical justification for using cosmetics that have been tested on animals. There are alternatives out there. That is one of the easiest things you could do. It's easy to find the labels, you know, the not tested on animals logo. Entertainment, as a circus performer, you know, I'm quite familiar that, you know, circuses haven't got the greatest history in this, but moving more and more away from having animals in circuses now. In fact, most have completely done away with it. A few in Ireland are still using horses, but I can see even that moving out in coming years. Zoos as well. I mean, zoos, a lot of the argument is that they're doing it for conservation work, but that's a lot of time that's overstated. But I'm going to have to have my hands up as well. I admit to hypocrisy on this front as well. I've worked for Belfast Zoo in the past as a still walker. But I wasn't giving them the money, I was taking the money. So not that that's an excuse. The other things as well, like, you know, horse racing and dog racing. I find it difficult to think of any justification for wasting your money on betting on horses. You look at the suffering that happens in the Grand National every year, and horses die every year. And it's not just in the Grand National, it's in horse races in general. If you want to bet premium bonds, you don't lose your money, you can take it out at any time. If you want to gamble, you buy some premium bonds or something. Now, animal testing. Now, in relation to drugs, you know, obviously, I'm in support of animal rights. I'm going to maybe take a stronger position on this than some of you may take. But with regards to testing drugs on animals, the picture's changing there as well. 92% of drugs that prove safe in animal trials fail in human trials. And of the remaining 8% of past human trials, 50% have toxic effects that weren't predicted when they were tested on animals. More and more non-animal options are becoming available. In vitro studies on human cells and tissues, computer models are increasingly being used to test drugs now. Epidemiological studies, population studies, looking at the link between lifestyle and disease. So basically these new technologies are pretty much rendering animal research obsolete. So hopefully it's going in the right direction with that as well. Unsurprisingly, the vegan movement, like any other movement, has its disagreements. Now, I'm guessing those two aren't vegan actually, that's just the genetics. And the main disagreement within the vegan community is over the abolitionist and the welfare position of animal rights. Basically, that is the way that the abolitionists would frame it. They'd say animal rights advocates are campaigning for no cages, animal welfareists are campaigning for bigger cages. I think that's quite a disingenuous position to take, because the two positions aren't mutually exclusive. Abolitionists believe that arguing for anything less than the complete dismantling of the animal holocaust machine is damaging to the message, but recent move has seen a more nuanced, pragmatic approach to this. With books like this, How to Create a Vegan World, I've got it here with me tonight, if you want to have a quick look through it, by Tobias Leinart, I hope I'm pronouncing his name right there. Basically, he suggests that we need a more evidence-based approach, more of a balance between idealism and pragmatism. Basically, moralising and guilt-tripping has been proven not to work. That's the issue. We need an evidence-based veganism. Comparing the slaughter of 6 million chickens a week at Moy Park to the Jewish Holocaust, even if you as a vegan you think that's a fair comparison, it's going to piss a lot of people off. It really is. Pointing out people's cognitive dissonance won't necessarily make them do anything about it. So I've not pointed that out to you tonight. When you do anything about it, it's up to you. But the simpler we can make things for people, the more change we're going to get. The small wins can lead to a bigger change. So the one diagram I lifted from the book for tonight is this one. That's the amount of vegans, that's the amount of vegetarians, that's the amount of people reducing meat. People reducing meat can have a huge impact on the amount of animal suffering going on in the world. Now, some vegans may disagree with me on this, but I think that's the way it's going. You've got to be evidence-based in what you're doing. You've got to be pragmatic. Look at the way you can achieve your end goal here, and that's the way. So I would support things like, meatless Mondays, reducing your meat consumption, doing things like that. And if you start with that, read more about the ethics, you might move further along the path towards full-on, top-level vegan.
13th level.
So the way thinking is going at the minute as well, there's a lot of humanists obviously thinking about veganism. In fact, compared to the rest of the population, there's a lot more vegans and vegetarians within the humanist movement. One survey suggested that 40% of humanists are either vegetarian or vegan. That's a huge, bigger amount than any other group. So the move for a lot of vegan humanists is towards this new movement, sentientism, which basically
I'm going to ask you to answer me this question by the time we're finished our meeting here tonight. Is name me one thing in this room, one thing, that isn't made in whole or part, or transported in whole or part without use of coal, oil or gas. That's part of our, we're locked into an ecocidal, so that's the latest kind of legal, political term here, genocidal action, which is an international crime against humanity. I think we're going not through the 6th great mass extinction event. This is an ecocide. the slow ecocide, in terms of we're losing many, many species every day even before we have a chance to document them. And of course, we should remember as good humanists that it isn't that we are like animals. We are a species of animals. We share a common evolutionary history with all other life on this planet. And I think there's something in that humanism, but not unique to humanism, can find in a kind of a Darwinian, what's sometimes called, excuse me, the academic in me will give you a word we often use in the academy, biophilia. You know, it's a bit odd, you see, well, and it simply means a love of life. Now, it doesn't mean some sort of spiritualized sense of falling in love with the non-human world, but it's a sense of healthy respect. I mean, the fact is that you can describe all the horrors that Dave was pointing out, and just as a point of interest, human beings on the globe produce 70 billion farm animals every year we raise for slaughter to eat their flesh. You need to think about that. We don't call, you want a slice of pig? Unless you're my dad, he's from County Wicklow, there's particularly uncouth lot down there. But the way in which we engage in cognitive dissonance as human beings, ever since Yale High, where we kind of hide what it is we're eating. It's pork, roast beef, and so on. And it's because I think there's something quite disturbing. And we have some evidence in psychology, particularly for younger girls, mostly it seems to affect girls around 12 to 15, when they suddenly realise that Larry the Lamb, that they were brought up in as moral tales and beautiful, suddenly what, you're eating Larry the Lamb? And there's a kind of change that happens. Now, it doesn't last all that long for many of these kids, but that sense of the ways in which we try and hide what it is we're doing. It's the reasons why abattoirs don't have glass walls, folks. You don't mean any ethical arguments, of which there are many, and Dave has, outlined many of them. It is the fact that if you were to see the conditions under which the things that we consume and eat every day made from animal flesh, and just even think about that, mull over it, flesh. That's what we're talking about. But of course, it sits uneasy with us. Is that the fact that I think just showing people the factory farming conditions with the horrendous abuse of the dignity and the social conditions of animals, we know, we have the evidence. It's not just foxes who fear for their life as they're being chased by hounds. We know that fear is contagious within cows as they're being led to slaughter. And so on. And yet, many of us, because we've been raised in a meat-eating culture, meat to veg, that's the standard, and that's the challenge that we're facing. So vegetarians, vegans, people who are reducing particular red meat consumption are pioneers in a much more healthy way than I was brought up as a collapsed Catholic. I've been a pioneer in Dublin when I wore a pin and didn't drink alcohol, which I quickly abandoned, as well as the church. But pioneers are often ridiculed. That's how every great change happens. What? Give women the vote! In fact, there were tracts written in the less enlightened bit of the Enlightenment period in the 18th century called A Vindication of the Rights of Brutes, to echo A Vindication of the Rights of Women, written by Mary Wollstonecraft, that we all know from the connection with Shelley and Frankenstein. That the idea of demanding equality for women, she might as well give animals rights. And that's part of what Dave, in a way, was saying about the cascading effect, or whatever the metaphor you want to use, the expanding circle of moral compassion and equality has always been a struggle. You can even extend beyond our discussion tonight, beyond sentientism, which is simply the capacity that we give moral concern to things that can feel pleasure or pain. The issue, this goes right back to one of the great English philosophers, a utilitarian philosopher, Jeremy Bentham, in the early part of the 19th century. He said the issue is not whether they can talk, but can they feel pain and experience pleasure? Then the creature, the entity, is morally considerable, and so on. And I think it's that great struggle to expand our moral concerns, which could end up, in my own view, following what has happened in both parts of South America and New Zealand, where they have given legal personhood to non-living entities, sometimes based on indigenous ideas. So 2 rivers and a mountain in New Zealand have legal personhood, and they're protected from exploitation and so on. That might be an interesting follow-on debate from here. How far do you go with this kind of expansive view of where do we end in terms of our moral considerability and so on? And also, when we start thinking about sentientism, or what's the basis upon which human beings see ourselves as special, it gets us then into other debates which are equally controversial, we have to deal with them ethically, of quality of life. You know, it is the case that in terms of capacity even for communication, for empathy, for a full and healthy life, that it might even be that certain sentient animals have a better quality of life than somebody in a persistent vegetative state. And therefore that raises interesting ideas. Well, then what is it about human life that we somehow presume on the, that ego hierarchy that Dave pointed out? Yes, it definitely has a lot to do with the Christian, Judeo-Christian story of, God created earth and gave man dominion over the earth. Now, to be fair to the Christians, there is a counter tradition, although it's much less prominent, although the current Pope, Francis, comes from St. Francis of Assisi, which is much more about, he's the patron saint of animals and indeed the environment and so on. So there is, countervailing narratives that you can, as humanists, engage even with Christians who come with a very different background. I gave a speech similarly in Laker. This is what a working professor. Looks like I'm now a recovering politician, but still an activist. But I was invited by the Irish Council of Churches 2 weeks ago in Lurgan. So I hopped on the train on my bicycle and went there and could see the car park full of cars, all these good Christians arriving there to talk with me or listen to me. And I opened up by saying, what would Jesus drive? And I said, he'd be like me, I think. He'd either reduce the amount of travel he would engage in, or indeed use public transportation, and so you can see them all shifting uncomfortably and so on. And I would ask you, as humanists, what should humanists eat? What should Jesus drive? Well, you can say, what would humanists drive as well? But I think in this case, it seems to me that humanists have a particular opportunity, if not obligation, because they've been pioneers at the forefront of pushing evidence-based compassion and empathy for quite some time, for hundreds and hundreds of years. That's a natural leap. It's difficult, because we've been raised in a meat-eating and a Judeo-Christian culture, and we're all trying to, decolonize our minds of that. But there is an absolute connection between the current planetary crisis that we're going through. If there are a number of things you want to do on an individual basis to help reduce climate breakdown, and again, I speak as a hypocrite. I'm glad Dave mentioned that. We're all hypocrites. I'm on a journey from I've been a vegetarian for almost 40 years. I've been a vegan since January, or veganuary as it's now called. And it does take some, thinking in terms of your lifestyle and so on, but it is possible. That if there's one thing you can do in terms of helping reduce climate breakdown is adopt a plant-based diet. Reduce your red meat consumption in particular. And it also has these other benefits. You're healthier, as well as reducing unnecessary animal suffering. Because ethically, last time I looked, the 1947 Declaration of Human Rights did not say you've got a right to meat. Dad. Well, they always say it to him around the Dublin. Meat, he's one classic, working class man. There's less of meat on his plate, not a proper meal. We have no human right to meat. We are adopted evolutionary. We're omnivores. Yes, we have canines, the sharp bits, but we have molars. And here's the beautiful thing, or the troubling thing about being a human being who's ethically switched on, which I think humanists have to an exaggerated sense. We can choose how to eat. We can't say the same for a lion. We can choose because the issue in terms of just the biophysical conditions of life on this planet as we know it is that life predates on life. Unless we can learn to synthesize rocks or live completely off water, we're going to have to choose which other living entity to kill. You want to use that term. So it's, even a plant-based diet, you're killing other creatures or entities, living entities. But I think we all could agree that in terms of a cow, a sentient being that can feel pleasure and feel pain, and I won't go into the horrors of boats that they use and the horrible things we do in factories when the animal's still alive. Killing, I'm going to use that term, crops to feed ourselves is a lot less ethically troubling than it is for animals. And that's our dilemma. There's a wonderful book by a very good American author, food author, called The Omnivore's Dilemma. We have the choice. We are the only creature on this planet that can really have this choice as to what forms of life do we consume and use, what type of food system can we have. I'm not going to talk about the entertainment abuses of animals. I think there are legitimate uses. That's another ethical issue. That's what ethics is. How do we distinguish between the legitimate use of something or a human being, a process, and the illegitimate abuse? But also in the case of vegetarianism or veganism, it's also, as well as use, abuse, it's also non-use. It seems to me a lot of the problems we have in the world is where we've extended, particularly our technological and industrial capacity, has far outstripped our ethical and moral capacity to understand what's going on. It's that classic, I don't know which nuclear, maybe it could have been Einstein to name check him again, that when the Americans created the atomic bomb, he was alleged to have said, or it wasn't him, it was somebody else prominent, we didn't stop to think, should we do it, only can we do it. And I think that's part of the evolutionary challenge of being human, is that often, and it's not just bad corporations, but there is issues around how corporations are pushing certain lifestyles on us, and indeed the state often needs to hang its head in shame in terms of not just RHI, my park, but not only we're raising and slaughtering 6 million chickens, they were also ripping us off as taxpayers. Now, the scheme ran fine in England, folks. As a Green, I would support green subsidies. I'd rather see green subsidies than subsidies for fracking, for example. I think we need to leave the coal in the hole, the oil in the soil, and the frack in the crack. And the reason why I connect that energy story to particularly food is that by rights our food, and indeed our beer, should come dripping in oil. But every stage from farm to fork involves the use of carbon energy. You've got your Massey Ferguson tractor, built by carbon energy in a factory, running on red diesel, or something like South Armagh, I don't know, washing through red diesel, and so on. Then you have the, in some respects, wonderful capacity that human beings have to our technological ingenuity. We can artificially increase the fertility of the soil by fixing nitrogen, creating pesticides and herbicides and so on, all of which require carbon energy. If we couldn't do this, we wouldn't be able to increase the fertility of the soil. That raises another issue for your future meeting about, human beings, how many of us on the planet can be sustained. Population problem can't be ignored. Yeah, there are too many fat white Westerners, that's how I often just begin, because we have such a bigger impact of a Western meat-based diet than mind all the flying we do and so on. And this is not about guilt-tripping anyone. The real issue politically is we're locked into these systems. We're locked in. If we don't have a good public transportation system in Belfast, which is bloody tiny, if you've ever travelled around Europe, we're a tiny city, it's relatively flat, it doesn't rain that much. We should have more cycle lanes, we should have bloody trams in here like we had before. But of course, if we don't have a good public transportation system, what happens is we are one of the most car-dependent cities in Europe. So the issue is, how can we unlock our behaviours? And individual action is absolutely central, but also political action is needed. We need to echo a very old trade union movement from America called the Industrial Workers of the World, otherwise known as the Wobblies. They had a great slogan, which I think could be used for any campaign, any group. It was educate, agitate, organise. We need to educate ourselves. I don't trust what myself and Dave are saying here on these issues. I always tell my students, and indeed it's a humanist mantra, is that we should trust those who seek the truth, doubt those who say they found it. We should always be sceptical, always be critical, and satisfy ourselves. We need to educate ourselves. But the facts are here. Whether it's the water use, whether it's the pollution, Whether it's the contribution in terms of climate breakdown, an excessive red meat-based diet is just bad. Bad for our health, diabetes, cancer, and so on, have all been associated with an excessive red meat-based diet. Never mind the horrendous impact on sentient living creatures who we kill, as I say, 70 billion of them on the planet every year, we raise and kill and slaughter. So the issue is then agitate. You can take individual action. You know, the salads that Dave pointed out, I'm so glad you did that, because that's still our mental model in terms of, oh my God, so you've got rabbit food, the classic, what are you eating rabbit food, and so on. And there's an issue of presenting a vegan, vegetarian-based diet as better and something that we should look at positively as opposed to begrudging. And I do think the green environmental movement, of which I've been a member for many years, has to hang its head in shame in a way in that kind of hectoring, almost religious, you know, telling people you shouldn't do that, even like the teetotal at the party, and so on. We have to present a vegan, vegetarian-based diet, I think, certainly is something that's attractive, it's possible, make it more convenient, but the reality is, if we believe the scientists who produced their report last October, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, we have, they said at that time, 12 years, so by 2050, then about 11 years, and for me, I would connect the school strike for climate, which we've had here in Belfast, and is, yes, smaller than in other places, and people say, oh, they should be in school learning. Let me tell you this, on 1st of March in the House of Commons, there was a debate on climate change. We have 650 MPs. There are 50 in the chamber on this issue. So how dare those Tories in particular criticise those young people for taking a Friday off school when they were truants from the very debate that these kids are talking about. But there is, it's the part to join up that connection is the organisation. And that might be something, again, that a group such as yourselves might be interested in, you know, looking at Extinction Rebellion, this new movement, that's essentially saying, if you don't respect existence, expect resistance. Power gives up nothing without a struggle. Humanists have always at the forefront, whether it's thinking, whether it's agitating, and so on, in being pioneers of pushing out our thinking. That's how we've made progress. Yes, it can be dispiriting. You just feel like you're banging your head against the brick wall. I mean, there's Ian and John here who've known me for quite some time. When I started out with politics in Northern Ireland, with a big Taggy accent in Hollywood, I was 6'7", fine strapping man. And politics has worn you down, because I was like the only gay in the village. I was the only feeling in the chamber. And it can feel quite lonely, but the arc, to paraphrase Martin Luther King, the arc of history bends towards justice. But that includes the more than human world. You know, and people say, oh, well, if you're given to animals and so on, you're not looking after our own. Kind of Jolene Bunting, stupid logic. You know, local jobs for local people. And we start being compassionate towards animals, somehow we're taken away from being compassionate towards the needy and vulnerable. So it's absolute bollocks. We have the evidence that those who give and are promoting a vegan, vegetarian diet, are compassionate animals, who give, are also the ones that are standing shoulder to shoulder with refugees, with criticising the government. Why aren't you looking after your ex-servicemen? You know, it isn't that it's an either or. I mean, compassion is a muscle. Show that picture again. Compassion isn't like some, you know, finite resource. Oh well, like Scrooge, I'll get a little bit here. Compassion is something that grows the more you use it. So this is all part of that intersectionality that justice, you know, extends to the more than human world. So I'll just leave you with the thought of who speaks for the trees. You know, these creatures don't have a voice, don't have a vote. You know, there is interesting examples in even horrible places like Hungary, and our horrible right-wing populist, you know, wannabe Trump, a guy called Viktor Orban. Even in Hungary, they have a commission for future generations. Wales has also, you know, looking at the future. So I can connect our concern for animals, our concern for the environment, with the fact is, I have 2 kids, 21 and 14. The 14-year-old used to think it was a god, now I'm a gobshite, but that's part of the teenage phenomenon. The 21-year-old absolutely knows I'm a gobshite. But activism and most of my academic career has been motivated deep down by that concern. I am looking at the world my kids are going to be inheriting. That should be what's mobilised. This is all connected. It's not like animal rights is here, the environment is here, pollution, water issues, climate breakdown, and our kids. They are all connected in the web of life. And I think humanists have a fantastic opportunity with a long and proud history of saying, you know what, the science is telling us. It's raining reports. We don't need any more bloody science. What we need is the political will. And often I think that in looking at an issue as challenging, and I have no doubt in terms of you reflecting on this thing, but how could I change my diet? But the thing is, you know right to it. It's not a vital human need when you can have a vegan or vegetarian diet that can adequately provide you with enough protein. All I need is 2,000 calories a day, folks, in terms of a healthy diet. And I think we've been lulled into seeing that convenience is a right, that the taste of animal flesh, and think about it in those terms, use the word flesh, because when you use that in the context of our food, it almost sounds like we're cannibals. Yes, we are evolutionally adapted. You know, our teeth I always look at, and yes, you could say in previous evolutionary periods where we didn't have agriculture and so on, there was some justification perhaps for meat eating. There's also issues that, you know, there are more respectful ways of engaging in meat eating. You know, you can eulogize non-Western cultures, but, you know, in Aboriginal cultures, they respected the animal. We show absolutely no respect. No respect for this living creature. All we're interested in is the price and the quality. And it's usually crap. The quality of even the meat we're getting is not as good as it was in previous generations. So whether on any of these issues you slice this, I think I encourage you, I don't have to encourage you because you're all humanists, therefore you're critical, you want to question accepted dogma. But this, as I was saying the day beforehand, I've been an academic now for almost 30 odd years, and the one thing that gets my students going in a class is this issue. That's what we do every day. Every day we engage in either meat consumption, or it's not meat, leather, or what was the condition under which that medical application or medicine I'm using, was that based on animal exploitation? It's not a pleasant thought to think that many of the advances and conveniences that we have in our society is based on the back of not just human suffering, but there's also animal suffering that goes along with it. So here endeth the secular sermon.
Very good.
We have about 15 minutes now for anyone to ask any questions and to just have a bit of a conversation of everything we've just heard.
Can I ask a question? I suppose I've kind of got used to recycling. I can't believe how much recycling I do now. You know, just, I mean, you're taking armfuls of stuff now out and putting it in their red boxes. It seems like there must be more and more packaging that they're firing at us to get us to recycle. There must be some kind of a market in it. And we have to, there couldn't have been this much packaging before. What were we doing with it? Just throw it in the black bin? Anyway, I can't help feeling though that as I recycle that it's all a bit pointless because it's only me and it's only my neighbour and so on, and we're not organised as you put it, John, I suppose, and we're not organised in a structural sense. So I kind of have feeling, as you were saying, Dave, now Sainsbury's are they're sensing the market. Capitalism is moving in here. And we're going to find that the whole market kind of co-opts the whole vegan movement and the environmental movement and so on. I'm not sure whether it's a good thing or not, but I just sense that somehow we have to get organised, but I'm not sure how. Maybe one of you can help me with that.
Organised in terms of
it's the tragedy of the commons, I suppose, that we're all doing our little bit, I suppose, but we're not really doing it as a system. How do we change the the system to actually. I can't help feeling that that if we don't change our economic model, we're going to end up really not making much of a difference.
Yeah, I mean there are plenty of groups to join. I mean, join groups till you're blue in the face. I mean, Extinction Rebellion is the one that everybody's focusing their energies on now. You know, that this seems to be gaining a lot of momentum. If you really want to be active, you can get involved at that level. But even just doing things on your own is making an impact. You know, you can be as involved with this as you feel comfortable with. You can take it all the way if you want. You can chain yourself to stones, railings, or do anything you want. But you know, starting you know, taking it in incremental steps. You know, you wouldn't just go out and just chain yourself to the railings.
But there's an awful lot of Chinese people are growing up and want to eat meat like Westerners. Anything I do is just wiped out completely by.
Even with China, have the potential to make a lot of impact. You know, I mean, democracies, it takes them years to come up with the decisions on how to recycle. If China says, right, we're going electric tomorrow, everybody goes electric tomorrow, they have a huge capacity to.
Yeah, well, we need a strong man to make a right choice.
Strong we Greens. No, the reality, you're right. We need system change, not climate change. We need both individual action that's going to be necessary but insufficient. Which, you know, I think we should look back into history. The abolition of slavery, the women getting the vote and so on. These are models, or even wartime mobilisation, defeating Nazism and so on. That's the scale and the urgency that we need. Individual action ain't going to do that. Individual action is like a commitment device to, yeah, I'm doing something. It's like me at election time. You know, we go canvassing on doors, and whether or not people tell you the truth, I don't know. But I know for damn sure when I put up posters, are there. So to me, taking those actions in the vegan or cycling, I know I absolutely I can be sure of this, but you're sometimes shouting to avoid politically. And I do think it's mobilising people around. I think the strongest ethical language we have is the language of justice and injustice. This is an injustice. We're extending justice to the modern human world here. We're extending justice to our kids and future generations and so on. Because if I look back in our recent history, it's those movements for justice that have mobilised people. So I think framing it in terms of a language of justice, but politics has to be involved. You know, demanding at the election we're having here on the 2nd of May, asking whoever knocks on your door, what are you doing on this issue? Where is the Belfast agenda, the community plan we have for the city? Where is its commitment to energy conservation, energy transition? More gliders and spec Stephen Nolan and that populist backlash. How are we going to start moving towards a congestion charge for the city, which has massively improved the health of Londoners? Yes, there's inconvenience, but we have the evidence that the more we get cars off the road, and this is not an anti-car issue. If you've got a mobility issue or you're in the hills in Fermanagh, of course you need a car, there's no public transportation. But that's the systemic change that we need. And we need to do this quickly, because you fix the roof when it's sunny, folks. It's cheaper. You can do it now. The more we delay action on, to me, it's the inevitable transition to a greener, low-carbon future. It's going to be cheaper. It's up there now with death and taxes. My fear is, exactly as Dave said, although in a different way, is the Chinese solution. I have no doubt human beings are a fantastically resilient, adaptable species. Even if we had nuclear Armageddon, even if we had massive climate breakdown, the human species will survive. And I don't really like that language that you see in the kind of David Attenborough and some aspects of the Green Movement. We have 12 years to save the planet. The planet has seen 5 major extinctions, folks. The planet is tough. The issue is, are we going to maintain a habitable world for ourselves and our children and those who come after? That should be our moral obligation. And if we do that, you don't even have to be an animal rights activist. If we act now in the interest of those yet to be born and make these changes, guess what? It will, as a byproduct, help animal suffering as well. But I think for me, it's that sense of injustice. If you truly were to read what's going to unfold for our kids and our grandkids, we should hang our heads in shame now and say, what did I do at this moment, right here, right now, and whether that's, you know, voting a different way than you've done before, whether it's joining one of these movements, whether it's being into Stephen Nolan, when he said, because you imagine me on Stephen Nolan, I've been on a few times, always said, you're anti-convenience and so on. You can say, hold on a minute, you are seriously contemplating you know, the non-necessity of convenience against planetary survival for our kids. That's what we have to really start contemplating, and the thing is, we can do it. We don't need any new technologies. You know, what annoys me often about the energy debate is, can the wind farms give us as much energy as coal, oil and gas? That's not the question. We're already wasting so much energy. Before we even get to renewable energy and so on, it's about energy conservation, energy reduction. You know, the challenge for us in the 21st century is, how can we have high flourishing lives using less energy, less animal stuff? That's the trick. Not simply say, we're going to replace. That's where the market comes in and says, there's a profitability here. I really don't think the future, if it's going to be sustainable, it's going to be capitalist. We want to have a lot more localized economies, small scale economies, circular economies. You know, this is not about romanticizing the past, but I tell you, there are generations, some of them in this room tonight, they remember a time before this high consumption, high carbon lifestyles. We're going to have to start learning from those older generations, even as we're looking forward to the future. You know, we've already had these excessively, you know, unsustainable lifestyles for a couple of decades.
Even with meat consumption, it's only in recent years people eating meat every day of the week. You know, if you go back 50 years, that wasn't happening. It's a couple of days a week.
What about less people?
Less people. I'm an absolute supporter of copulation without procreation. More sex, less babies. And particularly less fat white Westerners. Because there's a danger, it can be a quasi-racist argument, which was very popular in the 60s and 70s, zero population. Too many black, brown and yellow people. When actually, in Northern Ireland, we live a 2-point-planet lifestyle. In other words, if everyone on the planet to live like us, in terms of energy, water, pollution, we need 2.5 planets. Now, if you feel any better, the average American is 6. But that means if we're using it 1.5, 3.5, somebody somewhere else isn't getting their fair share. If you are committed to global development and the billion people living on less than $1 a day, we have to go on a carbon diet. We have to figure out a way of having high quality lives using less resources to enable those people in the global south to be lifted out of poverty. This can't be a drawing up of the ladder after ourselves. So absolutely. And there's a happy marriage, the final point, there's a happy marriage, or civil marriage, between feminism and giving a woman control of her own fertility and increasing the equality of women in society and what's called the demographic shift. It's happening in Germany, it's even happening in the UK, even in Ireland we'll always have a higher, younger population. You empower women and you begin to see the population decline. So that's why feminists should be behind this as well, in terms of that as a
So nearly every country in the world has been through the demographic transition, so you know the fertility rates are going down. So it is a racist argument. You know, the problem is all the people who are already born, and all the mothers who are already born need to make sure that, as you say, that there's women's education, so that that's the thing that raises
copulation without procreation. That's the hashtag.
It took a lot of strength of will, I would think, to change from being a normal meat-eating person to turn to veganism. The only people I've seen interested in it and really fired up by it are teenage girls who tend to go towards dangerous kind of dietary practices. Do you maybe worry that could happen? For instance, I have a granddaughter.
I think that
That has been an element with the sort of the Instagram vegans and and it is definitely something to be wary of as well.
I have a granddaughter who's had to get B12 injections.
Yeah.
She hasn't developed her diet
yeah.
to fully meet the needs
Well, that is
within veganism.
I mean, what I think that is a problem, it's a bit like the minority of welfare cheats we get, which gets an exaggerated media coverage, is that more people die unnecessarily and have shortened lives because of meat eating, not because of veganism. And we don't really get that in the media. They focus on this Instagram, these young girls who haven't educated themselves enough and are probably motivated by the wrong reasons for doing this. But that should not be a reason why we shouldn't seriously consider this as an ideal path. A plant-friendly diet is going to be necessary as part of this transition.
That does get a lot of attention in the press.
There are arguments so that I try to reduce eating meat and I contribute to compassion and fun and things like that.
I mean, it is possible to thrive on a vegan diet, but I accept that there is the possibility that people's makeup is different. There may be the potential that some people cannot thrive on a vegan diet. I accept that, but you know, you got to know your own body and know what is working for you. And I think the majority of people could thrive on a vegan diet, and as long as they're being sensible about what they're eating. But that applies to any diet. You know, making sure that you're getting your B12. I mean, my girlfriend's a meat eater. She has to get B12 injections every month when she's eating meat. So.
Apparently you can't be a vegan if you keep cows.
If you what?
If you have cows.
Well, it depends on the. I mean, I'm not happy with the labels in general. I mean, this is a whole load of them at the start there. But you know, do whatever you want. If you want cats.
Apparently dogs can survive in a vegan diet.
But this is not I'm curious to hear you use the word normal.
Yeah.
That somehow cycling is in a bit abnormal, going a non-meat diet. That's part of the problem. It's not like a cultural, you know, after you accept we've been socialised to think in a certain way, the same way that most of it. To me, it's almost structurally similar to the dominant Christian ethos that most of us were brought up in. That was normal. Where we have to start challenging that and say, come on, we want a new normal, or actually we want pluralism. We're not here to dictate how people should be here, but here's the evidence. The scientific evidence is incontrovertibly said we need to move towards a plant-based diet for the survival of a habitable Earth. Now, you go and do what you want with that, but the issue here is not even between left and right and Greens. It's between human beings and the biophysical reality of the universe. The second law of thermodynamics doesn't argue with politics. This is us on a headlong course against the basic physical laws of the universe. So,
we were both at the George Monbiot event, you were introducing and stuff, and he talks about it being changing the narratives around this. You know, the stories that we tell ourselves about our existence. That is what we need to change. You know, we need to focus on.
Sorry.
Anyone else?
Is there anybody else?
I just say, I work in school, and our school is an eco school. And our kids, we're very much into healthy breaks and, you know, making sure that our kids do that in the school. And do you not think that that is a way to get to the kids of our generation now is through education and educate them at primary school? You know, from quite young, right up, so that when they go on to university and they go on to do whatever it is that they want to do, that they would have that mindset.
Yes. And if you want to weigh, I teach this at the university, is we all know Aldous Huxley wrote the dystopian novel Brave New World, or many of us have read it. His better book on this is a book called Island, one of his last books before he passed away in 1965, and he described there the pedagogy that I think we need. And it's part of the reason why I think our education system is insufficient for the tasks ahead of us. We're not equipping our young people with the skills and knowledge they need. The first thing you learn is ecology. You learn about the connections of life and your connection within it. Get away from this hierarchical view of human beings being top dog on the planet. It's a web of life. And guess what? If you start pulling and destroying bits of here, it's going to have an impact on you. Then it's about learning about society, so sociology and so on, philosophy. Rather than necessarily, maths will come into that as part of learning about the more than human world. And it does give you great hope. And why is it that two of the most hopeful things I've seen, and I've been at this game a long time, one came a very unlikely source, the Pope almost trying to drag me back in. He wrote a wonderful document, the Pope, an encyclical 2 years ago called Laudato Si. And really good, scientifically informed and so on, of course, from a very different ethical place than me. But it did give me hope. Well, here's a Catholic Church, lots of money, they can mobilise people, but they've turned out to be, like a lot of these organisations, like the Irish football team, great on paper, crap on grass, lots of broad words, not actually doing anything. But the second one I've already name-checked is this school strike for climate, where kids, they're not stupid, they're living in an information-rich age, they can make up their own minds. Yes, the downsides of the Instagram generation, but they're being taught ecological issues in school. I love the fact that Education for Sustainable Development now, where you get kids out of the classroom, into forest, and you can do counting, numeracy, by looking at how many acorns you have, and so on. So much opportunities to get kids who are now suffering from nature deficit disorder.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we would do. Our school is right beside the Cliff Hill, so we would take our kids out and walks and trips up over, the Cliff Hill, and it's brilliant. They love that.
Yes. We need more of
Really
that.
carrying the messages home and so on as well.
That's our hope. These are the future leaders of tomorrow, the policy makers, and so on. These are the people we need to equip. And I have to say, as an educator at the university level, I don't think we're educating our young people, the next generation, enough on these issues. I'm not just, scared of it, but saying, here's the facts, but here's the solutions as well. The solutions are there.
Yeah.
But the solutions may involve things like a 3-day working week, flying less, eating less red meat. And as somebody once said, what if climate change is a hoax and we create a better world for nothing? That was amazing.
That's a brilliant question.
Yeah.
I think education is a very simple thing as well, going back to this one's point about interesting salads. I talk to a lot of young people coming out of school even, and they have fantastic knowledge of maths and science, whatever. But they couldn't make a salad.
Yeah.
And teaching people just to make a simple salad to feed themselves or whatever. Those simple skills, I think, is something we shouldn't overlook either. I'm not criticizing the other skills.
Sure.
I'm just saying some simple things where you can sustain yourself easily in the right path.
And I think too, in our schools now, we have so many kids from different nationalities and different parts of the world in Belfast now. So they all have different diets. We have different kids in our school now who we, just wouldn't eat meat, and so we have to accommodate for them. So it's very much so.
But the point you make is we've become progressively de-skilled. De-skilled in making things, fixing things. We have built-in obsolescence in our technology, which we can't. If your phone breaks in, that's it. You've got to bring it back and somebody else has to do it. So it's another part of the bigger picture of how do we introduce repairability, skills in terms of budgeting, for example, just basic. Here is a budget, because I think a lot of our young people get quickly into debt, and they're preyed upon by unscrupulous, particularly banks, or banksters as I call them, in terms of getting into a culture of debt-based consumerism. But also they're not being able to feed themselves healthily, and so on. And I think we should make home economics, as we used to call it back then, mandatory. Everyone should learn this. And also make financial budgeting mandatory. We should include in our civics and citizenship education non-violent direct action. That it is absolutely your right as a citizen in democracy, unlike in China, that we can engage voting, writing letters in a newspaper, right up to non-violent direct. That is a democratic right. And I'm convinced now that non-violent direct action is the way forward. And I speak as somebody who's been a long time unionist, trade unionist, at least to remind the DUP, I am a unionist, a trade unionist, of using strike. It's an inconvenience, but you're drawing attention to something. I even controversially, although I was perfectly consistent, I supported the flag protesters here a few years ago. As long as it was non-violent, and it was human rights compliant, they had every right to use that action, and so on. That's that issue. I may not agree with you, but I defend your right to say it, and so on. But I do think the normal processes, and I speak as a recovering politician, the system isn't broke, it was made that way. We have a democracy that is now in crisis. We were so in love with democracy in all Ireland, the dead used to vote. You've seen the decline in people voting, and so on. This is a part of this story, to use the phrase Dave used, is about a rebooting of our civilization, of our democracy, of a relocalization, a selective deglobalization. That's another topic that frightens people, because I think we'll have to move away from these long global supply chains and so on. I do like Chilean white wine, but I'll take Armagh good cider as well, and so on. It is about seeing that we need to rethink our economic system. But it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take decades. We need the planet. My fear is that corporations will come in and they'll cherry-pick the bits that they think they can make money from.
Exactly.
And you know, for example, we have the technology now where each of us could be an energy provider, even in our inclement climate. As I say, it doesn't rain as much as we think, and it's more sunny or ambient sunlight. We can create energy from our solar panels on our houses. Why aren't we all gaining from that energy transition, rather than centralised renewable energy companies taking over that? That to me is all part of what we have at stake here. To me, it's like a new industrial revolution or a new enlightenment we're looking at. And of course, enlightenment began in bars like this, salons in Europe. So welcome to the enlightenment, people.
Steve,
John, I listened with, frankly, some disappointment. There's a lot you're saying, both of you, which is very right and very correct and very going in the right direction. But the reality out there is much, much more difficult. And we're dealing here in Northern Ireland with a society in which large numbers of people think it is legitimate to deny other people all sorts of basic rights. And that's the front line where it's been for a long time. And I think to talk about some of these things, it's close to fantasy at this stage. And frankly, what I would say was just the hardest thing to say. It's running away from the issues.
Well, I would completely disagree with you. I've been at the front line of challenging the DUP for quite some time as the biggest human rights denying party here. There's an absolute connection between the demands of social justice for our LGBTQ community and this struggle here. And I think just, saying, oh, it's hard, it is hard. But when you point the finger at somebody, it's straight back at you. What are we all doing? Vote green, vote often. If you don't like sectarian politics, don't vote for the bastards. Vote, use your voice. We have so much more of our citizenship that we can use. It's not just about voting. It is also about getting involved. Join a political party. It doesn't have to be the Greens, some other party, and try and change their policies. But I think we need to not get it, go from, I don't know if you're familiar with in psychology, it's called the Kubler-Ross cycle. It's often used in terms of shock and grieving, where you go from denial to depression. But in between those is agency and activism. Hope is generated not from sitting back, as I used to do before I got involved in politics, throwing your shoe metaphor at the table, go and do something. It could be becoming vegan, talking about these issues. Maybe asking, as I would like to do, and I'd like to talk to some of the teachers as well, about going into the schools and explaining these issues of climate breakdown, obviously in an age-appropriate manner, and so on. But there is no disconnect between anything I have said here and challenging those hard issues of sectarianism. Part of this bigger piece is making peace with each other, this place, and indeed the planet. I mean, to me, this is an issue that is beyond Catholic, Protestant, and dissenter. It doesn't matter what your religion or no religion is, the sea levels are going to rise up, whatever you do. This could be a unifying vision. We used to make things here in Belfast. We have fantastic engineering traditions. Why aren't we making wind farms, solar panels, creating jobs that are not outsourceable for our young people? It's one of my greatest regrets as an educator. I see a lot of my students, they leave Northern Ireland, these are the educated ones, they ain't coming back. They're the very ones. What are we doing now to give them a reason for staying here? This is what I call the Green New Deal. We need to actually use our skills, create jobs here locally, decarbonise our economy as quickly as possible. And so I encourage you, don't get depressed, get angry.
And these issues are all interconnected. They're all part of the same issue. It's where you focus your energy.
We are out of time for questions now, but we still have lots of time left to socialise and approach individuals if you have any more questions I would like to talk about.
Could I ask one question if there was only one thing
One
that we could do to help the environment now.
Adopt a plant-based diet.
If that's too hard for you at the minute, start with Monday and work from
I was going to say every Monday.
I
Yeah.
at least have.
Oh, good.
Yeah, you're good, Margaret.
Or pretend you're happy when you're fishing on Friday.
Kind of a round of applause for our speakers.